You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Acceptance is the disciplined validation step that ensures completed work is not merely finished activity, but genuinely meets agreed standards of value, quality, and safety. The orientation highlights that done must mean more than coding complete or visually correct. It must reflect observable fitness for purpose. Acceptance brings together evidence from tests, telemetry, and structured demonstrations to confirm that deliverables align with increment goals and backlog intent. It also integrates non-functional requirements such as reliability, accessibility, and security, recognizing that these are not optional add-ons but fundamental elements of trust. Acceptance protects users, teams, and organizations by creating a clear, auditable checkpoint between construction and release. Without it, risks remain hidden, defects escape, and confidence erodes. With it, delivery gains credibility, as every increment earns its way into production by demonstrating that it delivers real, safe, and sustainable value. The purpose of acceptance is to connect deliverables to intended outcomes. Each backlog item carries a promise of user benefit, reduced risk, or improved experience. Acceptance is where teams verify whether those promises have been realized. For example, a story promising simpler onboarding must be shown to reduce steps or errors, not just add a new form. Similarly, an increment goal to improve system reliability must be validated with error budgets and recovery checks. Acceptance is not about subjective satisfaction, but about confirming behavior and posture against objective expectations. This clarity protects both teams and stakeholders, ensuring that effort translates into results. It also builds trust that releases advance organizational priorities, rather than just accumulating output. Acceptance purpose grounds validation in outcomes, turning done into evidence-backed assurance that work meets its intent. Acceptance criteria quality is critical for meaningful validation. Criteria must be clear, testable conditions of satisfaction, written in plain language accessible to all stakeholders. They should capture edge cases and exceptions, not just happy paths. For example, acceptance for a payment workflow might require transactions above $10,000 are flagged for review, and system prevents duplicate submissions, alongside normal completion paths. High-quality criteria are drafted before implementation begins, ensuring alignment on what success looks like. They prevent ambiguity, where developers believe a feature is complete, but users find it unusable. Well-formed criteria guide design, testing, and demonstrations, reducing rework and disputes. They also provide transparency, making expectations visible across the team. Acceptance criteria are the backbone of validation. Without them, done is subjective and fragile. With them, it is measurable, defensible, and aligned with user needs. Definition of done alignment ensures that acceptance covers more than functional correctness. The definition of done codifies organizational expectations for quality, security, accessibility, and operability. Acceptance must verify that each deliverable meets these standards, not just the immediate feature intent. For example, a new feature may function correctly but still fail acceptance if logging is absent or accessibility guidelines are ignored. By embedding definition of done into acceptance, teams prevent incomplete increments from reaching production. This alignment also creates consistency, as every story and increment is held to the same bar. It ensures that trust attributes, such as security and supportability, are built in, not bolted on. Definition of done alignment elevates acceptance from narrow validation to holistic assurance. It guarantees that done means releasable, supportable, and sustainable, protecting both system health and stakeholder trust. Verification and validation clarify two complementary aspects of acceptance. Verification checks that deliverables conform to specified requirements. Does the system behave as described in criteria? Validation confirms fitness for intended use. Does the solution work in realistic contexts to achieve desired outcomes? For example, Verification might confirm that a new field accepts only valid inputs, while validation ensures that users complete the workflow faster and with fewer errors. Both are necessary. Verification ensures compliance with expectations, while validation ensures relevance and effectiveness. Confusing the two can lead to brittle systems, technically correct but operationally unhelpful. By distinguishing them, teams ensure that acceptance confirms both correctness and usefulness. This dual lens prevents releases that meet specifications yet fail users. Acceptance is only complete when verification and validation both confirm value and fitness. Non-functional acceptance elevates qualities such as performance, reliability, security, privacy, and accessibility to first-class validation criteria. These aspects often shape trust more than visible features. For example, acceptance of a search function is incomplete if it works but takes 10 seconds to return results under normal load. Similarly, privacy acceptance requires confirming that sensitive data is anonymized, encrypted, and retained responsibly. Each attribute must have explicit thresholds and evidence sources such as latency percentiles, uptime budgets, or accessibility test results. Treating these as optional risks, late surprises, escapes, and reputational damage. By embedding them into acceptance, organizations make trust attributes intentional and testable. Non-functional acceptance ensures that increments are not only usable, but dependable, safe, and inclusive. It reinforces that real value is multidimensional, and validation must reflect this reality. Traceability practices link each acceptance criterion to corresponding tests, telemetry events, and decision records. This linkage makes acceptance auditable, transparent, and easy to review later. For example, a performance criterion may map to a load test script, while a privacy requirement links to a data retention policy. Traceability ensures that validation is not improvised but systematically tied to evidence. It also simplifies reviews, as stakeholders can see directly how criteria were tested and where results are stored. This practice supports compliance by embedding trace links naturally, avoiding duplicative reporting. Traceability also builds trust across teams, reducing disputes about whether something was validated. It creates continuity, allowing future teams to revisit past decisions with clarity. By linking criteria to evidence, acceptance becomes more than a one-time event. It becomes a durable record of assurance. Environment comparability ensures that acceptance occurs under conditions representative of production. Testing in artificial environments with unrealistic data scales or configurations can produce misleading results. For example, a workflow may pass in a small test environment but fail in production under real load or with integrated systems. Acceptance must verify behavior with representative integrations, data volumes, and security settings. This comparability prevents false confidence and late surprises. It also strengthens evidence, as stakeholders can trust that results reflect real-world conditions. By aligning acceptance environments with production, organizations reduce the risk of hidden defects. They also reinforce that validation is about readiness, not simulation. Environment comparability turns acceptance into a reliable predictor of operational performance, protecting both users and the organization from fragile releases. Test data stewardship balances the need for realistic validation with protection of confidentiality. Acceptance often requires test data that reflects real-world complexity, but this must be handled ethically. Practices include anonymizing sensitive fields, controlling access, and applying retention limits. For example, anonymized production data may be used to test scaling behavior, with safeguards to prevent privacy breaches. Stewardship ensures that evidence remains useful without creating new risks. It also demonstrates responsibility, reassuring stakeholders that validation respects both users and regulations. Poor data stewardship undermines trust and can create liabilities greater than the value of testing. By embedding stewardship, organizations treat test data as carefully as production data. This discipline ensures that acceptance evidence is both valid and ethical, reinforcing the integrity of the entire validation process. Risk-based sampling ensures that acceptance effort is proportionate. Instead of attempting exhaustive checks everywhere, teams focus validation on high-impact paths severe failure modes, and areas with recent change. For example, in a release with dozens of functions, emphasis may fall on payment workflows, authentication paths, and any modules touched in the sprint. Sampling prioritizes scarce attention where stakes are highest. It prevents fatigue from over-testing trivial paths while reducing risk of critical escapes. Risk-based sampling acknowledges that validation resources are finite, but with discipline they can be applied wisely. It balances thoroughness with pragmatism, ensuring safety without waste. By targeting validation, organizations strengthen trust that acceptance protects users where it matters most. This practice reinforces that acceptance is not about quantity of checks, but about quality and proportionality. Roles and responsibilities clarify who prepares, who witnesses, and who approves acceptance. Ambiguity in roles often causes delay or dispute. For example, developers may believe acceptance is complete, while product owners expect further validation. Clear roles assign preparation to teams building the feature, witnessing to stakeholders verifying outcomes, and approval to designated authorities such as product owners or risk partners. Responsibilities also include escalation paths, ensuring disputes are resolved quickly. By defining roles, acceptance becomes structured and accountable. It also ensures that multiple perspectives, technical, business, and risk are represented. This transparency prevents confusion and strengthens trust. Clear roles transform acceptance from an ad hoc ritual into a disciplined process. They ensure that every increment is validated by the right people, with accountability visible and responsibility shared appropriately. Supplier and third-party acceptance extends validation beyond internal deliverables. Modern systems often rely on vendor components and external services, which can introduce risk. Acceptance must confirm that these elements meet criteria, such as service-level agreements, contract tests, and backward compatibility. For example, a new API integration may require validation that vendor changes do not break downstream systems. This practice ensures that external dependencies are as trustworthy as internal work. It also protects against surprises when vendors alter interfaces or degrade performance. Supplier acceptance reinforces that value delivery spans organizational boundaries. By embedding third-party checks, organizations ensure that increments are validated as part of an ecosystem, not in isolation. This practice builds resilience and trust in complex environments where external partners influence outcomes directly. Change control for criteria documents when acceptance conditions evolve. Criteria often shift during refinement as understanding improves, but without records, evaluations become misleading. For example, if acceptance originally required, quote, latency under 2 seconds but was relaxed to under 3 seconds, this evolution must be logged. Change control preserves honesty about what is being validated. It ensures that comparisons remain transparent and prevents selective rewriting of history. By maintaining records, organizations build accountability and enable audit. It also supports learning, as future teams can understand how expectations evolved. Change control reinforces credibility, ensuring that acceptance remains a fair, disciplined practice. It protects trust by showing that criteria are living but traceable, evolving responsibly rather than shifting silently. Exception handling policy defines how partial acceptance may occur when urgency and risk justify phased validation. Sometimes, increments must be released with gaps, provided compensating controls exist. For example, a new feature may ship with partial accessibility verification, backed by manual support and a firm deadline for remediation. Policies must define when such exceptions are permissible, how they are tracked, and who approves them. Exception handling acknowledges reality while maintaining integrity. It prevents hidden shortcuts by making compromises explicit and accountable. This practice balances flexibility with safety, ensuring that partial acceptance does not become silent neglect. By embedding policy, organizations manage risk transparently. They preserve trust by demonstrating that exceptions are deliberate, documented, and bounded. Exception handling ensures that acceptance remains disciplined even under pressure. Anti-pattern awareness protects acceptance from degeneration into ritual. Common pitfalls include criteria written as implementation steps rather than outcomes, demo-only approvals based on appearance, and sign-offs granted without evidence. These practices erode trust, as deliverables may look complete but fail in use. Anti-pattern vigilance ensures that acceptance remains outcome-driven, evidence-based, and auditable. For example, requiring proof of tests and telemetry prevents superficial looks-right validation. Awareness also prevents gaming, where teams tailor deliverables to pass weak criteria rather than serve users. By naming anti-patterns, organizations remain vigilant against decay. This practice preserves the integrity of acceptance as a safeguard for value and trust. It ensures that done remains a standard of observable assurance, not a symbolic gesture. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Acceptance Readiness Review ensures that validation begins from a stable, transparent foundation. Before execution, teams confirm that criteria are complete, environments are aligned with production, representative data is available, and the appropriate observers are present. For example, readiness checks might reveal that load testing cannot proceed because monitoring hooks are missing, or that accessibility validation requires assistive technology not yet provisioned. By verifying readiness, organizations avoid wasted effort on flawed validations and reduce the risk of overlooking gaps. Readiness reviews also align participants, reinforcing shared expectations about what is being tested and why. This discipline prevents surprise disagreements during demonstrations and strengthens confidence in results. Acceptance Readiness Review is essentially a pre-flight checklist, a safeguard that ensures validation runs smoothly, efficiently, and credibly, protecting both the process and the trust stakeholders place in its outcomes. Demonstration discipline gives structure and clarity to acceptance sessions. Instead of improvised walkthroughs filled with internal jargon, demonstrations present three key elements: the original problem, the intended change, and the observed behavior against acceptance criteria. For example, a demo might begin by describing how users previously struggled to complete onboarding, then show the new streamlined steps, and finally verify that acceptance conditions, time to completion, and error rates are satisfied. This discipline keeps focus on outcomes rather than technical implementation details. It also helps non-technical stakeholders understand the value of the change in terms that resonate with them. By following a consistent narrative, teams avoid the trap of looks-right approvals and instead ground validation in observable evidence. Demonstration discipline turns acceptance sessions into effective, transparent checkpoints where everyone can clearly see whether promises were fulfilled. Evidence capture is the practice of systematically documenting acceptance results so they are reviewable, auditable, and reusable. This includes logs, screenshots, test outputs, and telemetry snapshots, all tagged with timestamps and item identifiers. For example, a latency test might produce a graph of percentile results stored alongside the story ID and data validation. Capturing evidence ensures that validation does not fade into memory or rely on trust alone. It provides material for audits, future investigations, or repeat evaluations. Evidence also enables learning, as patterns across multiple validations may reveal systemic issues. Standardizing capture formats prevents inconsistency, making artifacts easier to interpret. By embedding evidence into acceptance, organizations strengthen accountability and defensibility. They demonstrate that done is not declared lightly but is supported by verifiable proof. Evidence capture elevates acceptance from subjective review to disciplined assurance. Defect triage during acceptance ensures that issues are classified and managed proportionately. Not every deviation means immediate rejection. Findings must be weighed by severity and risk. For example, a cosmetic error may be accepted with a follow-up ticket, while a security flaw demands immediate remediation before release. Triage establishes criteria for deciding what qualifies as a blocker, what requires near-term follow-up, and what can be scheduled for later. Ownership and deadlines must be assigned for all non-blocking issues to prevent drift. This process ensures that acceptance decisions are both practical and safe, balancing urgency with operational continuity. Defect triage also reinforces fairness, as similar issues are treated consistently across increments. By embedding structured triage, organizations prevent both excessive rigidity and unsafe leniency, ensuring that acceptance strengthens trust without paralyzing progress. Go/no-go decision rules provide clarity and consistency in determining whether deliverables are released. These rules pair acceptance criteria with stop-loss thresholds, rollback readiness, and the organization's defined risk appetite. For example, if reliability metrics exceed thresholds, the release halts, regardless of pressure to proceed. Decision rules prevent optimism bias, where teams are tempted to rationalize away failures. They also accelerate evaluations, as outcomes are compared against predefined criteria rather than debated anew. This discipline makes acceptance decisive, avoiding ambiguous or politically influenced judgments. By embedding go-no-go rules, organizations ensure that releases are safe, intentional, and aligned with tolerance for risk. These rules provide confidence to stakeholders, proving that increments are released only when they meet observable, agreed-upon standards of value and safety. Rollback verification is the practice of proving reversibility during acceptance rather than assuming it. For changes with material risk, teams must demonstrate that rollback steps function as planned. For example, a feature deployed under a toggle may be disabled live to confirm that the system returns to its previous state without disruption. Treating rollback as routine, rather than exceptional, normalizes safety. It also prevents false confidence, where teams believe rollback is possible but never test it. Rollback verification reassures stakeholders that failures can be managed gracefully. It supports bolder experimentation, as the risk of harm is contained. By embedding rollback verification into acceptance, organizations demonstrate resilience. They prove that progress does not depend on perfection but on the ability to adapt quickly when signals go negative. Accessibility verification ensures that deliverables serve all users equitably. Acceptance must include assistive technology scenarios, keyboard navigation checks, contrast threshold validation, and screen reader compatibility. For example, a validation session might demonstrate that forms can be completed entirely via keyboard with appropriate focus indicators. Accessibility is not optional. It is a legal, ethical, and practical requirement. By embedding it into acceptance, organizations prevent exclusion and demonstrate responsibility. Verification also supports sustainability, as accessibility improvements made early reduce costly retrofits later. Including accessibility alongside functional checks normalizes it as a first-class concern, not an afterthought. This discipline ensures that increments are not only complete but inclusive. Accessibility verification strengthens trust with diverse users and reinforces that done means done for everyone, not just for a privileged subset of users. Security and privacy acceptance verifies that deliverables meet the necessary controls for safety and trust. This includes confirming authentication and authorization pathways, validating data handling practices, and ensuring monitoring hooks are in place for sensitive actions. For example, acceptance may require demonstrating that unauthorized access attempts are blocked and logged with appropriate alerts. Privacy acceptance confirms that personal data is encrypted, retained only as necessary, and anonymized where appropriate. These checks prevent costly and reputationally damaging escapes. They also align increments with regulatory obligations. By embedding security and privacy into acceptance, organizations ensure that increments are not only functional but safe. This practice elevates trust attributes as central validation criteria, making them visible and verifiable. Security and privacy acceptance demonstrates that every release strengthens resilience rather than exposing new risks. Performance and reliability checks validate that increments meet agreed thresholds for responsiveness and stability under realistic conditions. Metrics such as resource consumption, latency percentiles, error budgets, and recovery times must be tested in environments comparable to production. For example, acceptance may confirm that median latency remains under 1 second, while 95th percentile remains under 2, even at peak load. Reliability validation may simulate failures to ensure recovery procedures work within agreed recovery time objectives. These checks provide assurance that increments are not only usable but durable under real-world pressures. By embedding performance and reliability into acceptance, organizations prevent late surprises and fragile releases. This discipline reinforces that done includes readiness for scale, stress, and failure. Performance and reliability acceptance ensures that products are prepared for the demands of users and environments alike. Contract and interface acceptance validates interactions with external systems and downstream consumers. Deliverables must demonstrate versioning, backward compatibility, and consumer-driven tests to prevent integration failures. For example, acceptance may include running contract tests against dependent services to ensure that API changes do not break clients. This practice ensures that increments respect the broader ecosystem of which they are part. It also prevents surprises during integration, where downstream systems fail unexpectedly. Contract acceptance strengthens trust between teams and partners, as interfaces are proven to be stable and reliable. By embedding interface validation, organizations demonstrate responsibility for system boundaries. They ensure that local changes do not create systemic instability. Contract acceptance reinforces that value delivery depends on ecosystems, not just isolated components. Compliance evidence closes the loop between acceptance and governance. By packaging required approvals, trace links, and retention notes into normal artifacts, organizations avoid parallel, duplicative reporting. For example, acceptance records might include signed approval logs, linked test evidence, and documented retention rules. This integration ensures that releases are both fast and auditable. It reduces overhead by embedding compliance naturally into workflow. Compliance evidence also reassures regulators and stakeholders that obligations are respected consistently. By treating compliance as part of acceptance, organizations eliminate the false trade-off between agility and accountability. This practice strengthens resilience, proving that increments are trustworthy both technically and legally. Compliance evidence makes validation defensible under scrutiny, preserving speed without compromising integrity. Post-acceptance monitoring plans extend validation into early production life. Even thorough checks cannot capture all issues, so telemetry and alerting must continue once increments are live. Plans define which events to watch, thresholds for alerts, and times for checkbacks. For example, monitoring may focus on adoption rates, error spikes, or unusual usage patterns in the first week. This vigilance ensures that issues missed in acceptance are caught quickly, minimizing harm. Post-acceptance monitoring demonstrates humility. No validation is perfect. By embedding ongoing checks, organizations maintain confidence and resilience. Monitoring plans bridge the gap between acceptance and sustained operation, ensuring that increments perform as expected under real traffic. They complete the safety net, protecting users and systems during the most fragile early life period of a change. Partial acceptance mechanics define how provisional validation is managed when urgency justifies phased release. Documentation must specify what gaps remain, what compensating controls are in place, and what deadlines exist for remediation. For example, a system might launch with partial accessibility validation, provided manual support is available, and full remediation is scheduled within 1 quarter. By documenting mechanics, organizations make compromises transparent and accountable. They prevent silent shortcuts where incomplete acceptance becomes normalized. Partial acceptance acknowledges reality but embeds rigor. Trade-offs are explicit, bounded, and tracked. This practice balances urgency with responsibility, ensuring that risk is managed rather than hidden. It reinforces trust, showing stakeholders that exceptions are deliberate and controlled. Partial acceptance mechanics preserve the integrity of validation even under pressure. Continuous improvement of acceptance ensures that the practice evolves alongside systems and risks. Templates, examples, and training should be updated based on escapes, auditor feedback, or observed misses. For example, if repeated accessibility issues are found post-release, criteria templates may be strengthened with new test cases. Continuous improvement prevents stagnation, ensuring acceptance remains relevant, rigorous, and efficient. It also reinforces culture. Validation is not a static checklist, but a dynamic discipline that adapts to context. By capturing feedback and refining practices, organizations make acceptance sharper over time. This evolution reduces escapes, builds trust, and improves efficiency. Continuous improvement ensures that acceptance is a living capability, learning from its own shortcomings. It makes validation more than a gate. It makes it a system of resilience that grows stronger with every cycle. Acceptance synthesis underscores that deliverables earn trust only when they are validated against clear criteria under realistic conditions. High-quality criteria, aligned with the definition of done, ensure increments are evaluated holistically. Verification and validation confirm both correctness and fitness for use. Non-functional checks, traceability, and comparable environments strengthen rigor. Evidence capture, triage, and go-no-go rules make acceptance decisive and auditable. Part 2 practices readiness reviews, demonstrations, monitoring plans, and continuous improvement embed acceptance into a living system of resilience. Together, these practices transform acceptance from ritual into assurance, proving that increments are not only complete but also safe, reliable, and valuable. Acceptance synthesis highlights that trust in release and operation depends on disciplined validation, where done means observable quality, validated outcomes, and readiness for the demands of real use. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.